live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up.
That's right, Matt Kirby. Day 275 of being the daddies. What the hell does that even mean?
Natties, right? No. That's not.
No, that says daddies. That says daddies. All right, we're off to a bit of a weird start here, but I can dig it. It's Wednesday. It's fan-led Wednesday. If that's where we're going to go with the conversation, let's do it. Matt, you're going to have to elaborate on that in order for it to make sense. But
is that beating Ohio State? Has it been 275 days since they beat Ohio State?
Has it been 275 days since Michigan won the national championship? No, that can't be right. Well, it has been what?
It might be,
9 months?
yeah. It might be, yeah.
Holy shit. How the hell did that happen so quickly? It doesn't feel like that long ago, but yeah, I guess, I'll trust you on the math there, Matt. Yeah, it is. Good to see you, Matt. CJ, welcome. Darren, good to see you as well. It is obviously Fan-Led Wednesday where you guys lead the show. You guys know how this works. If you tune in, if you've been a part of this for any number of shows, you know that I do a terrible job of keeping up and getting to all the questions in the comments. So if you do have something, if you've got a topic, something that you want to tackle, make sure that you get it in early because...
Yeah, get it up right away.
If not, there is a high probability that I'm going to miss it at some point. Good to see you, Larry. Larry says, Trent Newt, best offseason edition out of the portal. Listen, is that your wife's burner account?
I don't know, but I'm a huge Larry fan. That's all I know.
It looked like you were typing over there before that comment came in, Trent. Are you pulling double duty over there, just gassing yourself up?
I mean, I could be, but I plead the fifth.
Ricky, good to see you from the Facebook page as well. Justin from the YouTube page, good to see you. Yeah, so, it's Fan-Led Wednesday. Trent and I are going to, again, we'll wait for you guys to throw some questions in, throw some topics in, but it's not like there's really any shortage of things to talk about. I mean, whether it's the quarterback situation, the offense, the defense, the coordinators, Sharon Moore as a head coach, playing Monday morning quarterback on what he should have, could have done in the transfer portal and that whole transition phase. It just seems like there's a lot of people that have some pretty strong opinions on this football team after 6 weeks. Mike Rogers from the Facebook page says he roasted Trent early on. Now he thinks he's look at this, Trent.
Look at that.
Feel pretty damn good. Look at
2-0 against Chris right now.
Couple of early comments, people just, sending good vibes to you. And I guess I'm trash over here. Nobody gives a shit about me. That's fine. But yeah, Trent, there really are no shortage of talking points with the Michigan football program. And, you can really go across the board. And I think that that's a pretty weird place to be after 6 weeks when you go back preseason and you look at what you really thought you were going to see out of this football team. And again, I know that there were going to be question marks offensively, but nobody expected this pass offense. Dude, I don't even know how to describe what we've seen from the passing attack through 6 weeks. It's been a really, really, we were going through the passing numbers before the show, which is eye-opening, and I think we're going to put something out about that. But this offense year after year, even with J.J. McCarthy, and I get it. J.J. McCarthy made some incredible plays through the air, but when you just look at pass production for the Michigan offense, they have regressed year by year since the 2020 year, and that's where you and I had stopped, Trent. We didn't even go before the 2020 season. So has it regressed in terms of statistics? Yes, but there's not anybody out there that's going to look at J.J. McCarthy and say he wasn't an elite quarterback. I think it's just a product of the Michigan offense. And so we can talk about that. We can talk about the defense and how surprising that's been. Let's just get right into it now that we have some in here, and I don't want to waste too much time and then fall behind in the timeline. Darren May from the Facebook. Actually, let me start with Matt Kirby. He had the first question in. Matt Kirby from the Facebook page. He says, what adjustments would you like to see? And I think we can probably pair that with Darren May's question. He says, also from the Facebook page, you think this bye week will help the issues? So Darren is asking, do you think it'll help? And Matt Kirby is asking, what is it exactly that you would like to see take place? I'll throw that over to you, Trent.
Well, I definitely don't think a bye week can hurt anything right now. I think this is probably the best time for Michigan to have a bye week where Sharon can talk to his assistant coaches, talk to Kirk Campbell, talk to Wink, and let them know what isn't working, what he wants to see going forward. Jack Tuttle, he's healthy now. He's your QB1. I think this is a good time for a bye week because you have a full week now to implement him into the offense as the starting quarterback. Defensively, adjustments. I don't know if it's personnel or whatever you have to do with your scheme, but something has to change in the back end. We've discussed it. The Michigan secondary, by far and away, light years away from what it was last year, 22-21. It's not good. Zeke Berry, Jair Hill, they've been solid issues kind of all season, left on islands at times, out of place, missed tackles, fundamentals. It's just not there, and that has got to change going forward.
Yeah, and I actually put out an article today on the SI page. It's on the Facebook page as well. But I talked specifically, Matt, about those adjustments that I want to see. And offensively, for me, it's pretty simple. It's the same thing that we've talked about week after week now. And it is with Kirk Campbell and with the passing game. And I think now that, it's pretty much a done deal that Jack Tuttle is going to be the starting quarterback for the remainder of the season, that I do think that we are going to see more production out of the passing game. But as I indicated in the article, a lot of that is entirely dependent on Kirk Campbell and his willingness to want to get the ball down the field and try some things vertically. Trent, we've talked about this a lot. Michigan's throwing passes, but it's all bubble screens. It's all quick slants and things near the line of scrimmage. They're really not trying to force the ball vertically down the field. And so I think, going into the bye week, that certainly has to be a discussion that Sharon Moore has with Kirk Campbell and a decision you make that we are going to do this now. Now, I will admit that, having Davis Warren and having Alex Orji probably, made that a little bit less possible if you're Kirk Campbell, because you didn't really trust in the ability to get the ball down the field. You had Davis Warren, who was turning the ball over left and right, and Alex Orji was struggling in his own right. And when Jack Tuttle came in, against Washington, this is when it really hit me how bad the Michigan passing attack has been. And I said this on social media early, but when Jack Tuttle hit that 22-yard pass to Amarian Walker, the level of excitement that I felt about that play, I remember my wife and my kids were downstairs and I was like screaming obscenities. I was talking about playoffs at that point. It was a 22-yard routine play down the field, and that gave me the juice to believe that, holy shit, we can win a natty now. Like, I think that really speaks to how inept this passing attack has been. When you see something routine and to you that looks incredible, that just goes to show you how far away it's been. So one of the adjustments has to be Sharon Moore and Kirk Campbell sitting down and figuring out how are we going to get more of the passing game involved. And I talked about it. I've shared the numbers for Michigan's top 3 wide receiver targets this season. It is abysmal. These guys through 6 weeks have numbers that, competent offenses through the air put up in a single game. The wide receivers are not involved outside of being glorified. Oh, Jesus. Glorified blockers. Go ahead and say that 10 times fast. So I think that that's something that absolutely needs to be addressed. And then Trent, you're right. On the defensive side of the ball, I don't know what's going on in the secondary, and I said this in the article. I understand that Wink Martindale has a certain scheme that he wants to run, and Trent, I can see you smiling over there. I can't see the comments down there, so I'll talk shit at some point when I scroll down. I get that Wink Martindale has a scheme that he wants to run, but I think at some point you have to say, okay, this isn't working on the back end. It's not putting our secondary in a position to succeed. Michigan is giving up a ton of yards through the air, well over 250 yards per game. Michigan has one of the worst passing defenses in the country. I think they're 115th nationally. Yeah. Like that can't happen with this defense, and in particular with the type of personnel you have. And so I think for Wink Martindale and Sharon Moore, you've got to sit down, you got to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to get better production out of your secondary. And we can talk about the coordinators all we want, whether or not Kirk Campbell is the guy and kind of how he's performing, and whether or not Wink Martindale is the guy and how he's performing. But this is, for all the blame that has been, thrown at Sharon Moore through 6 weeks, this is one area where he needs to step in after 6 weeks and demand that there's change, demand that there's better production. And I think that you can put the first 6 weeks on the coordinators, but if it looks similar in the back half of the season as it did in the front half, then I think you got to point to Sharon Moore and say, why didn't you do anything to change it? Why didn't you have those discussions to make sure you got better production? And so it's going to be really interesting, man, to see how the last 6 weeks compare with the first 6 weeks. And it has got to be significantly better on both sides of the ball.
Chris, for me, you talking about how you felt when Jack Tuttle hit that 22-yard pass to Walker. For me, right away, when Jack Tuttle came in, you saw the linebackers and the safeties, they had to drop back a little bit. They weren't in the box like they were with Alex Orji. But I just thought it was crazy and amazing how a Michigan quarterback could go through his progressions. Like you'd see his head here, he would shift, and then make the right read. That was astonishing to me because we haven't seen that all season long. Something that simple was like, whoa, like that. I didn't know Michigan was capable of going through progressions like that. Like that's insane. And then, he hit Walker in the middle of the field for 22 yards. And it's like, all right, the Michigan passing game is back.
Yeah, and I think Sharon Moore mentioned that when he was, maybe on the Inside Michigan Football radio show, but he talked about that when Jack Tuttle came in. You could see the defense was making certain adjustments that were going to open things up through the air. And so I think that, look, I mean, you don't have to be a football expert to know that there is a better passing attack with Jack Tuttle behind center than there was with Alex Orji. And I think that just having that threat alone is going to open things up for the Michigan offense. I get it. Jack Tuttle made some mistakes, but he was also pretty open during his press conference this week and saying, like, I had about a week of practice. Like, I hadn't been practicing much. He had about a week of practice, and then he was asked to come in with Michigan down 14 in the first road game of the season. Yep. So, look, I get he's a veteran guy. He's played a lot of football, but that's not an easy circumstance to walk into. And given what was happening around him, I think he showed enough to give everybody a sense of confidence that, hey, this passing game can be much, much better than we've seen through six. It can't be worse. Trent, it cannot get worse through the air. I think that's the good news with Jack Tuttle is it can only go up from here. I mean, hell, if Michigan can work itself into the top 100 through the air, I don't know, average a couple hundred yards.
Imagine if they could crack the 99th spot there. Oh my gosh.
It's a game changer. It's a game changer. When you go from less than 100 yards through the air to now you're putting up 200 plus, like I think that's a game changer. And then, what do you think that does for Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards on the ground? What do you think that does in terms of sustaining drives and putting points on the board and getting Dominic Zavada in a position to at least get a field goal out of it? I mean, everything seems to change offensively if they can just get a little bit out of the passing game. Trent, I got to be honest, man. I'm starting to think a lot of these accounts may be you. MMB from the YouTube page says Trent Knoop going number 1 overall next year.
My finger's getting a little sore over here from all the typing I'm doing.
Whoo! Let's go to Ricky from the Facebook page. He says he's got a question. He knows he hates to mention this name, but oh God, I should have pre-read this before I clicked on it. I made a promise. Like at least a month ago that I was never, ever, ever talking about this guy on the podcast again. But I guess because
you just broke it. You just broke your promise.
I didn't break it. I didn't bring it up. And I think because it's Fan-Led Wednesday, let's just honor the question. So Ricky from the Facebook page, he says, I know we hate to mention this name, but how much does Stalions play into all the upsets this year in helmet communication? How many sign stealers were really out there? I
think a ton. I think every
Go ahead.
I'm not saying that every program has a Connor Stalions doing exactly what Connor did. I think every major program has at least one person, though, whose job is to watch the sidelines and try to pick up on what they're doing. If teams aren't signaling anymore and they're using just straight comms, I think it's probably a big deal because that's what college football has been about for several years now. You have somebody on that staff who's trying to pick up signals. And if that's not happening anymore, that's a game changer.
I'm not going to say that the switch to the in-helmet communication hasn't changed things because I certainly think it has. But I just cannot sit here and give Connor Stalions credit for having an impact on Alabama Vandy. I can't do that. I think we are creating this sort of, and to his credit, he's also contributing to it by going on certain podcasts and talking about certain things and keeping his name in the spotlight. But I feel like we all have, or not we all, I feel like there are a lot of people that have given way too much aura and influence to a guy like Connor Stalions. I'm not saying that what he did or was doing wasn't impactful for the University of Michigan, and there's no doubt that the in-helmet communication has changed things in college football. But to sit here and want to give Connor Stalions credit for a lot of what we're seeing play out in college football this season, maybe it's because I'm bitter, maybe it's because I'm angry, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. I'm
not saying that Connor Stalions is why Vanderbilt beat Alabama. And
yes, you are.
So I'm just saying that. I'm just saying that it's a game changer when you go from trying to steal signals to not being able to do it anymore because of the helmet comms.
Yeah, but I mean, you still have people signaling on the sideline, right? Like those people haven't completely gone away. I mean, Michigan, I see it every Saturday when I'm walking around the field. They still have their boards down there with various pictures and shit on it. Like they still have people doing that.
Yeah, I mean, but I guess I don't fully understand that. Because I see the same thing. But if they're using their comms to talk to the green dot on both sides of the ball, the quarterback, your linebacker, whoever, I guess the only, because I know that the comms shut off at 20 seconds left, I think, or 15.
15, yeah.
So then maybe if they want to audible or something, they're looking the sidelines to try to see what that audible is. But I imagine whenever that initial call is, it can't be signaled in.
I mean, maybe communication goes down. Maybe you can't hear in the helmet. I mean, there's all sorts of factors that could come into play. But I mean, Ricky, just bottom line is no, I'm not giving Connor Stalions any credit for some of what we're seeing happen in college football this season in terms of upsets. Zach from the Facebook page, he asks, do you think we will see Amarian Walker with Tuttle able to throw or more? I'm sorry. Do you think we will see more of Amarian Walker with Tuttle able to throw a little bit better than our other QBs? I sure hope so, Trent. I mean, that completion, again, it was one completion, 22 yards, very routine play. I said this on Monday, not the type of play that's going to show up on ESPN top 10, but that certainly looked like a fairly easy pitch and catch. And I'll be honest, it looked damn good to see Jack Tuttle drop back and sling the ball on a rope to a guy wearing the number 1 jersey who made a great catch. It wasn't like he trapped it with his body. Like that ball was coming in with some heat on it. Marion Walker made a great catch on it, took a big hit, didn't fumble the ball, made a great play, and then stood up and had a little bit of swagger afterwards. Yeah, and I'm like, this is what we've been missing. So, Zach, I sure as hell hope we see more of it because from what I can see, I mean, that was the most electric passing play we've seen all season, courtesy of Jack Tuttle and Amarian Walker. And maybe it was because, and I said this, I can't remember if it was to you, Trent, but I know that Michigan's big on wide receivers blocking, right? Is the whole, no block, no rock sort of thing. And maybe that's the big hang up with Amarian Walker is that for whatever he can do as a wide receiver, like he's just not a guy that blocks well. I don't know what it is. It's puzzling to me, but I sure as hell hope with Jack Tuttle behind center that we see more of number 1 on the field because that connection looked pretty damn good.
Yeah, I think that's part of why this bye week is crucial for Michigan right now. I've said it before, I think this is where Michigan needs to have a very honest self-assessment of their personnel, their scheme, who should be playing, who shouldn't be playing. And obviously, based on what we saw on Saturday, Amarian Walker should be on the field. And my argument to what you just said, if he's not a blocker, which I know Michigan values that, don't put him out there when it's a run play. If you know that you're going to pass the ball on that play, put him out there. Because clearly he's one of the better targets you could throw to. He had separation. He caught the ball. That's more than what we've seen from plenty of the receivers this year. I know that Michigan's high on Peyton O'Leary and CJ Charleston. They're more they are blockers. You're not asking them to run go routes or 15-yard routes and to catch the ball. They are in there to block. So you put Amarian Walker in there to catch passes. That's my argument there.
Yeah, so I mean, very clearly, Trent and I are in the same boat here. I'm sure as hell hoping that we see number 1 on the field and that connection from Tuttle to Amarian Walker because that is, and you heard the commentators during the broadcast mention it. Like that is something that Michigan fans have rarely seen out of the Michigan offense so far. And once again, It was a routine 22-yard completion downfield. Like, those are the types of plays that Michigan should be making through the air week in and week out. But I'm sitting here pulling that as a highlight and getting all excited, talking playoffs over that. That just goes to show how bad it's been. But it was nice to get that glimmer of hope and see that potential that, yeah, there are pieces here in Ann Arbor that is possible. Let's just find a way to do more of that. And going back to what we opened the show with, that's on Sharon Moore and Kurt Campbell to sit down and say, okay, that worked, that looked good. We need to do more of that moving forward. And those types of things, it isn't just because we want to see, electric plays through the air. Those are the types of things that are going to help out your offensive line, your rushing attack. If you can get better and more balanced offensively, that helps out your defense. Like, everything will get better if you can get some sort of productivity from the passing game.
There's nobody that could convince me that Amarian Walker is not a top 3 or 4 receiver on this team. Just purely catching the football.
Yeah.
Athletic, tall. He's 6'4", 6'5". He's fast. He should be on that field when you're throwing the football.
Yeah, agree 100%. Mike Rogers from the Facebook page, he says, who is Chris?
This is a tough team right here.
I don't know. Who it doesn't matter who he is. He's a nobody. Brandon from the Facebook page, Brandon Montgomery, he says, I don't know if you guys watch Josh Pate, but I think he's one of the better CFB guys out there. He was saying the other day that the staff rating for more staff is so bad that he didn't want to use it for his model because he didn't think it could be that bad. Now he's not so sure. I'm not saying that's the whole story, but something to keep your eye on. That's a loaded.
I don't watch Josh Pate.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's how I'll answer it. I don't watch Josh Pate either. I know of him, and I know that he has a show. But full disclosure, I don't watch him. But I mean, look, I guess we're saying he has some sort of model for Sharon Moore's staff. Maybe it's a rating or whatever the hell it is. Like, yeah, there's no question that there are question marks about Sharon Moore's staff, and I think that a lot of it is because, whether it's offensively or defensively, the biggest thing I keep coming back to is, and maybe I'll ask you this, Trent, offensively, do you think that, and remember against Fresno State, we were talking about like knocking off the rust, and the biggest improvement comes from week 1 to week 2, like through 6 weeks. Have you seen a noticeable improvement in the Michigan offense from week 1 to where it is now into the bye week?
Not really. The only thing that, if I had to pick something, I feel like between the run game and the run blocking has been better from week 1 to week 6. Pass blocking, I still don't think is very good. And in my opinion, there's a big reason why. But the receivers haven't been very good. Obviously, the passing attack hasn't been good. While I think Jack Tuttle could change that, but just from week 1 to week 6, there's not a whole lot that's improved.
Yeah. How about defensively? A big noticeable change from what we saw in week 1 to what we are now heading into the bye week on the defensive side?
Defensively, I was very critical week 1, week 2 of Mason Graham, Kenneth Graham, the front 4. Those guys have been playing excellent. They're getting pressure on their own. They don't need to blitz, I don't think. While I know they do it, I don't think they need to anymore. That front 4 is getting plenty of pressure. Linebackers still, in my opinion, aren't looking very good. Second, you know how I feel about the secondary.
Yep.
So once again, both sides of the ball. I think the O-line run block, and then the front 4 run defense and pass rush have improved.
Yeah, so I mean, you've got some improvements here and there, but I think when you look overall at both sides of the ball, you're still seeing some of the same struggles you saw in week 1. You're still seeing it in week 6. And so I think that's why people are looking at the coordinators and saying, look, why are there no noticeable improvements? And discovering Khalil Mullings and having him as RB1, I think, has been incredible. And yeah, I think just by nature of getting reps, you're going to see the offensive line do better in the running game, but there's still very much issues up front. We know about the issues through the air with the quarterbacks and with the wide receivers. And then Trent, you're right. The linebackers have been hit or miss. The secondary has been very hit or miss, and that has been the case from week 1 to week 6. And so I think that's why you look at the staff that Sharon Moore put in place, and you start to say, okay, are these the guys that can get it done? Are these the right people to have in place? And I think where you really figure that out is in the second half of the season. You go into the bye week, you know what the issues are. Hell, anybody who's watched this team know what the issues are. The question is whether or not the coaching staff now can get it fixed and corrected for the second half of the season. And I think that's what we're really going to figure out, whether or not Sharon Moore can keep these guys intact and in place, or if he's got to make some difficult offseason decisions with his staff. Let's go to Paul from the Facebook page. Paul, he says, guys, do you have any idea what Will Johnson's injury is? He's usually laying the wood, and he uncharacteristically old. I think maybe that's missed a couple of tackles on Saturday night. I get he's your best defensive back, but if he can't hit someone, what would you do? Trent, not really sure specific. I mean, I know he had the injury to his finger. He had stitches in his finger, but besides that, I mean, do you think what we're seeing out of Will Johnson, because this was something that we talked about on Monday's show. We all know that Will Johnson is an elite corner. He can make plays on the ball. We've seen that from him. But there are also a handful of times this season where he's been out of position, where he's gotten burned. And you're right, we haven't really seen him make any sort of big-time hits. I mean, Trent, what do you think is really the result of what we're seeing with Will Johnson in terms of the inconsistencies?
I'm not real sure. I don't know if it's the injury or not. I do agree. Like Saturday night, I saw a couple times where he's basically shoulder checking people instead of wrapping up. And that was something that Will Johnson excelled at the last couple of years. He didn't miss tackles. He like Fred said, he would lay the wood and drill somebody. But it's not just Will Johnson. We're seeing it from Zeke Berry and Jair Hill. I don't know if it's coaching or what it is, but they are at the University of Michigan. They are D1 athletes. Like that shouldn't be issues. You should know how to tackle the ball carrier at this level, and especially after 6 weeks of football. So whether it's the injury or not, I don't know, but there's definitely some fundamentals missing with the whole Michigan secondary.
Yeah, agree. And I don't want to, I don't want to speculate. And I say that before I speculate. And I certainly don't want to like say things that I think, are a bad look. I'm just thinking out loud, and I'm just wondering. I mean, you're Will Johnson. You got stitches in your finger. You know, you're dealing with another injury that limited at least some of your reps this season. You know, projected to be a first-round pick. Team is 4-2 at this point. Defense is really struggling. I mean, are you really trying to go out and put your body on the line and jeopardize your NFL future in your last season of college football? Like, is that a part? That's the thing, Fred. I think when you see a guy like Will Johnson making the types of mistakes he's making, or maybe not playing as physical as you would expect, like really, I don't know, you can ask all those questions and wonder why, because I think we would all agree that Will Johnson should be playing better than what he's playing. And I don't think that's necessarily, I mean, you can take that as a knock, but really I think it's a testament to how good we all think he is. This guy is capable of playing far better than I think what we've seen. And I know the pick sixes have been great, but he was also burned against Fresno State. He was also burned against Washington. He has been out of position a handful of times. And, this was the guy that was unquestionably going to be the cornerstone of your defense, along with a Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. And, I would argue that while he's been good this year, I mean, would you say that Will Johnson has been, I mean, is he the top cornerback this year through 6 weeks? Is he top 5? Is he top 10? Or can you look around other college football and say, hey, these other guys are performing just as well, if not better?
Well, I mean, I don't know names off the top of my head, but I'm sure if you look around and you try to pinpoint certain players that have played better than Will Johnson, I'm sure you can find at least 5 or 10 of them. I know Travis Hunter's a stud at Colorado, but
pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, so no, Will Johnson's not playing like Will Johnson that we're used to. I do have a question for you, though. If Will Johnson's mindset is on the NFL and say he is making a business decision, should he opt out of the season and not play anymore to give Michigan's defense?
Nah, that would be a bad look. And I mean, he's talked about it. You know what I mean? His dad played at the University of Michigan. I just think that I don't see that being the case. Now, I mean, I don't know.
I guess my thing is if you don't have 2 feet in and you have a foot out thinking about the NFL, like, is that the best for Michigan?
Yeah, but that's speculating.
I know. That's purely speculation.
100%. If that was the case, then I would say, yeah, probably the best thing is just to opt out and not play anymore and put somebody in there who may not be as talented, but they're willing to lower their shoulder and make a play on the ball. I don't think that's the case with Will Johnson. I just think that for whatever reason, when you look at this defense and in particular the secondary, when you look at the fact that they are one of the worst in the country in terms of giving up yards through the air, you really got to start to wonder what's going into that. Is it scheme? Is it personnel? Is it the fact that it's a new coaching staff and things just aren't working as smoothly? Is it a hangover from the national championship? I don't know what it is. All I can tell you is when I sit back and I watch them play, it doesn't look all that great. Zeke Berry and Makari Page and Will Johnson, like these guys are very inconsistent. And Will Johnson, I still think is elite. He's clearly making good plays on the ball here and there. The pick sixes are incredible. But ultimately, it's the same issue that what we see with this defense overall is it's very hit or miss. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. And in particular, the second half, I mean, against Washington, that was the fourth consecutive week that the Michigan Wolverines were outscored in the second half. And we talked about it game by game that at some point in time, you saw it against Arkansas State, you saw it against Minnesota, you saw it against USC, and then you saw it against Washington. You're living life on the edge by giving up so many points in the second half. And let's not forget, man, you go back to 2023, 2020. I mean, that was a hallmark of the Michigan defense. They would go into the half and come out, and they wouldn't allow any more points from there on out. Yep. They were suffocating in the second half of football games. It is the complete opposite story with this 2024 football team. And so I think that's why everybody's looking around and saying personnel looks great. KG is still there. Mason Graham is still there. Derek Moore and Josiah Stewart and the linebackers are great. And the secondary, I know that you're missing Rod Moore and Mike Sainristil still, but they've got solid pieces in there. How can this group be so inconsistent, particularly through the air? I think that's the big question mark.
Yeah, for sure.
Justin from the YouTube page, he says, how strong are your feelings that this was the plan from the start, having Tuttle be the starter and his injury threw a huge wrench into things? About as strong as it can get for me. I mean, from the limited reps that we saw from Tuttle against Washington, it was very apparent to me very early on that Jack Tuttle was the best quarterback on this roster. Trent, I'm guessing that you had the same thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, definitely. Entering the season, I was definitely higher on Alex Orji than what some were, and then also from what we've seen from Alex Orji. I thought, though, it was a two-man race between Jack Tuttle, Alex Orji. Obviously, Tuttle gets injured, and they actually start Davis Warren. But from what we've seen from all three quarterbacks, I think it's very apparent that Jack Tuttle was meant to be the starter from day one.
Yeah, I mean, he seems, and we talked about this going into the season, that the biggest advantage Jack Tuttle had was that he had more games, more completions, more attempts, more touchdowns than any other quarterback on Michigan's roster combined. And I think you saw that on Saturday when he came in against Washington. And it's not like he's a pure drop back passer. I mean, he's got mobility. He can escape the pocket. He can create on the fly. He can do all the things you need from a Michigan quarterback in this offense for them to be successful. And so, yeah, I know he made some mistakes, but he didn't have a lot of practice under his belt. He was recovering from an injury, and he got thrown into a difficult situation on the road in a hostile environment. I think if you give Jack Tuttle some more live reps during the season, and obviously he couldn't get them earlier in the year because he was still recovering from a nagging injury, but I think once he gets in and settles into the flow of the game, I think you're going to see a more competent offense, and I think Jack Tuttle's a big reason for that. So, Justin, to answer your question, I am 1,000,000% convinced that the whole time this was supposed to be Jack Tuttle as a starting quarterback. And then once that injury became a problem, Sherrone Moore is probably looking at his options saying, okay, now what? Now what do we do? And I think that's how you get to a Davis Warren. Alex Orji, I think the complement of Jack Tuttle and Alex Orji would have been really good. It just didn't play out that way. And I think that's why the offense has looked the way it's looked through the first 6 weeks.
Yep.
Let's see if we can keep going through here. We all know Wink is Don Brown the second. He needs to go. I mean, I don't know.
There's a lot of comparisons right there.
That's just people who are. It's not racist. What do you call it? Ageist? I mean, it's another old white guy. You know what I mean? I don't think we're making that comparison if it isn't. From the second he got hired, before he did anything, he was already drawing those comparisons. So I think that's just a little bit of PTSD from the Dom. But I'll say this, Wink Martindale's not helping himself.
No, not at all. No.
He's not really doing much to sort of push back, at least in terms of the way the defense is performing against that narrative. CJ from the Facebook page, this might be more of a comment. He says, we complained about the passing game some last year, and Roman Wilson had almost 400 yards and 8 touchdowns at the same point last season. Yeah, that is insanity. I mean, You're talking about your leading receiver having 400 yards and 8 touchdowns through the air through 6 weeks, where, at this point, Michigan's leading receiver has 76 yards and 1 touchdown through 6 weeks. So it is a huge drop off. And once again, I just don't think you can put it on one thing. I mean, certainly the lack of efficient quarterback play played a role in that. But I mean, look, for as limited as Alex Orji was through the air, I wouldn't say the same about Davis Warren. Davis Warren could still throw the ball. He just was dealing with an offensive line that was struggling in pass pro, and he was struggling with his decision-making because things were breaking down so often. He was trying to force the issue. And so, I don't know, does Davis Warren perform a little bit better with, week 7 Michigan offensive line versus week 1? Maybe, but I don't think he's going to get that opportunity. And that goes back to what, the previous comment is I just think it was always supposed to be Jack Tuttle in this offense. And, part of CJ's comment there, the fact that Roman Wilson had 400 yards and 8 touchdowns at this point in the season compared to what we're seeing now, it is concerning. And I mean, if for nothing else, man, for morale, like these wide receivers, regardless of what they're going to say in a press conference in front of the microphone and cameras, like behind closed doors and when they're talking to their friends or talking to each other, there's no way in hell they're happy with what's happening right now.
There's no Michigan receiver that trots out onto the field saying, okay, I want to block somebody today. Right. There's no way that's possible. They came to Michigan to catch footballs and go out there and show what they can do.
Right. Like Tyler Morris, and to his credit, I mean, I think it was a very veteran, mature answer when somebody asked him about that. I think after Minnesota, he was like, we look at it as an opportunity to go out and get physical when we're blocking. And we like that sort of thing. And like I said, good answer from a veteran because you don't want to cause any waves. But there is no way that Tyler Morris is going home at night after getting 0 targets, 0 catches, 0 yards and saying, this is what I came to Michigan for. And so I think you have to get that figured out. I think Jack Tuttle is a great step in the right direction. And then the rest of it has to come from Sharon Moore and Kurt Campbell making a decision about what this offense is going to look like. Maybe again, another question here. I'm just trying to go online. CJ from the Facebook page, he says, is the secondary playing poorly because they aren't tested in practice by this receiver group? Trent, I'll throw that to you. Do you think that's a part of it? Is that the secondary just simply wasn't prepared to face any sort of competent passing attack going into the season?
No, I can't buy that. I mean, I see what he's trying to say, though. Obviously, the Michigan passing game is not very good. I'm sure the receivers aren't showing out during practice all that often either. So I get where CJ is going with that, but no, I can't buy that's why they're struggling.
Yeah, I mean, valid talking point, I guess.
I'll tell you what's a valid talking point. Remember this offseason when the defense would say, yeah, the Michigan offense, they're getting us at times. Like going back and thinking about that, how does that look?
All right, 100% convinced this is you. This is either you or your wife. I'm going to get to the bottom of this at some point. I'm going to have to do a little investigative work on my side once we get off of the live. Still going through here. Listen to his latest appearance on Bussin' with the Boys. No, thank you. I'm not doing any more of the Stalion stuff. I will do this. CJ once again with a comment. Stallion says, master the art of keeping oneself relevant after doing something controversial. Yeah, there is absolutely no question about that. I mean, you talk about 15 seconds. This guy's turning it into about 15 months at this point. And, it's so weird to me that there are people after 6 weeks that want to fire Sharon Moore for going 4-2, yet they look at Connor Stalions as some sort of hero when that guy is really one of the biggest factors as to why everything went to shit at the very end in this program, and why even now, halfway through the 2024 season, you're hearing shit about cheating and this and that, and why Harbaugh couldn't return, and NCAA investigations and all that. And for as little as you may think about the NCAA, Stalions was at the heart of that. I just don't understand why he gets such a free pass from a good chunk of this fan base. It's weird to me.
I had somebody text me yesterday, and he's not a fan of Michigan. He's not a fan of Ohio State. He's not really a fan of anybody. He just likes college football. But he was like, I think it shows you just how much Michigan leaned on sign stealing last year to win the national championship after going 4-2 this year. I'm like, hold on. Let's look at when all this happened. It happened right before the Michigan State game last year. Every team from then on out, changed their signs, signals, whatever. Michigan was just clearly the best team in college football last year. You had a ton of veteran players. You had J.J. McCarthy. You had so many players on that team. But because of Connor Stalions and what happened, so many people are holding on to that narrative that Michigan, the only reason they won was because they cheated. No, Michigan won because they were the best team on the field week in and week out.
Anybody who thinks that is an idiot. I mean, you've heard it enough from enough experts who actually play the game of football. And keep in mind, Connor Stalions, like, he wasn't on the sideline prior to that Michigan State game. And Michigan played the meat of its schedule, the bulk of its schedule in 2023 without that secret weapon on the sideline. I mean, Penn State, no Stalions. Ohio State, no Stalions. Alabama, no Stalions. Washington, no Stalions. So, like, I understand. I get why people do it, because if it was happening to Ohio State, Michigan fans would be doing the same shit. You would hear the same talking points. But the reality is, we all know why Michigan went 15-0 and dominated the way they did. And you look at the personnel on the field, and then you look at what these guys are doing in the league. Like, that was an NFL team that Michigan had on Saturdays. They were just better than everybody else. And I get it. If you're an Ohio State fan, you don't want to admit that. You don't want to accept the fact that that could be true, or that the last 3 years is really the result of your team and your program and your head coach being soft as hell down in Columbus. You don't want to admit that. It's much easier to point the finger at Michigan and say, well, you guys cheated. And so you better believe that, if Ohio State, I don't know, if they win this year, if they find a way to get to the national championship, I'm sure that we can find a little something on them to try to devalue or take the legitimacy away from their success. It's a good start, paying players out of the portal and paying high school kids to come to your program. Like, you're trying to buy a national championship. We'll find out if it works. If it doesn't work, dude, and I told this to somebody the other day, like, if Michigan messes around and finds a way to have a good day on November 30th, that is a bad look for this football. Like, there are no more excuses. If you lose to this football team, if that Ohio State team loses to this Michigan team, good luck finding an excuse for this one, because I don't know. What do you think the point spread is going to be going into November 30th?
Man, if they play tomorrow, I bet Ohio State's favored by at least 24. At least 24. Yeah. I'm guessing Ohio State's favored.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Sean from the Facebook page, he says, true or false, if Mr. J.J. McCarthy alone was inserted into this year's team, we make the playoffs for sure. Trent and I, we've talked about this a handful of times. If all things are equal and you just drop J.J. McCarthy into this offense with this team, is Michigan a playoff team? What do you say after 6 weeks?
I think they go at least 10-2. So I'm going to say yes, because what's Michigan missing offensively? They're missing a passing threat. They're missing somebody the defense needs to respect, stretch the field. JJ could do that. You have a good run game with Kalel Mullings and Donovan Edwards. JJ can scramble. He can make plays on his feet. If the protection does break down, he can scramble away. He can make a play. That's what you're looking for. And that's what JJ McCarthy could do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you lose on the road to Washington if J.J. McCarthy is your quarterback. And, I get that Texas was more talented almost essentially in every facet of the game, but I think that game even looks different if you've got J.J. behind center, because he can make some plays. Even though his statistics weren't elite, his ability to be a gamer on the field and just make shit happen, that was elite. And I think, look no further than that play he made against Bama, where it was the toss back from Donovan Edwards and JJ had to fling the ball down the field to Roman Wilson with a defender bearing down on him. And dude, he hit him in stride on the money. There is not a quarterback on this roster that can make a play like that. So certainly if JJ McCarthy's in this offense, yeah, I think Michigan can get to 10-2, and I think they can get into the 12-team playoff.
When you don't have elite receivers on the team, you need somebody that can fit it in tight windows. That's what JJ could do. That we've seen him do that. He can get the ball to Samaj Morgan and Tyler Morris and Fred Moore and so on and so forth. When you have an elite quarterback, they have those traits that can make even average to good receivers look really good.
Yep, no doubt about it. Another Wink Martindale. Can anyone argue that Wink is Don Brown II? He is so bad that hurts the offense as well. The defense is on the field so much more. No, and then I think that's what we said before, is that dude, there's more comments. That's what we said before, is that I think the comparison is a little bit unfair, but Wink Martindale is certainly not helping himself with the way that this defense is performing. So, can anybody really push back on it? Not at this point. He's going to have to prove it. MMB again, once again. I don't know. There's something weird going on here with this account.
So I must know this guy.
Wait, Trent is live and his wife is live from upstairs? What is that? What does that mean? I don't even know what this means.
I'm guessing Dana was on Facebook Live doing something. So I have to know who MMB is.
Jesus Christ, you got groupies in here on the live? This is just a wild turn of events on a fan-led Wednesday. Wayne from the Facebook page says, don't know Josh Pate, but I do know his opinion means nothing to me. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't follow him. I know of him, but I'm not really sure.
Like I know of him as well. I've seen some of his some clips of him and what he said about Michigan, but I don't watch Josh Pate's show.
Sean from the Facebook page, he says, how about never sending more than 4 or 5 to rush the passer? If you want to blitz a linebacker, then drop back a lineman or something. Trent, I mean, what do you think about that? Hey, you talked about that, how good the front is with Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant and not necessarily needing to blitz much. I mean, Wink Martindale did push back on that a bit and said, look, you guys think you're seeing me blitz all over the place, but it's just really different types of things that I'm doing. Do you think there's something to that? Do you think he's blitzing too much? Do you think they should just stop blitzing altogether and let the front 4 get to the quarterback?
I mean, you can't just stop blitzing, but I really don't know what their blitz rate is. I don't know what it was last year with Jesse Minter, but I would have to guess that he's blitzing more than what Jesse Minter did. And if you're not getting home or you're leaving your corners on an island and they can't do anything with it, then yeah, I think you should try to drop back that rate a little bit. Let your front 4 do what they're doing. Get pressure on the quarterback. Give your secondary, your corners some help. So it's definitely something that needs to be talked about this week between Sharon and Wink.
What happens if we went out, huh?
CJ from the Facebook page says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much faith do you have that this staff can turn it around? I'm at maybe a 4-ish. That is courtesy of CJ from the Facebook page. Trent, scale of 1 to 10, how much faith do you have that this coaching staff can get it turned around in the second half of the year?
I'll say a 5. I'll put it right in the middle. I'm not real sure. I think Michigan has the talent to turn it around, but obviously we haven't seen. It's now 6 weeks in, and we keep talking about that. Michigan has the talent; they're just not putting it together. Well, when are they going to put it together? At some point in time, I know you got to look at the personnel, but you also got to look at the coaching staff. Is Wink going to make any scheme changes? Is Kurt Campbell going to do anything to open up the pass game with Jack Tuttle at quarterback? I don't know. I'll put it at a 5 and go from there.
Same. I'll put it at a 5, and for all the reasons that you just said. I think the talent is there. I think the potential is there, but the question is whether or not the coaching staff is going to get it figured out, and whether or not, quite honestly, the players are going to make a decision to get it figured out. We've talked about this. Where is the leadership on this team? Where are the Mike Sainristills and the Blake Corums and those guys? Like, not just to be vocal and call everybody together, but be the kind of guy that makes a difference. Like, people listen to Blake Corum. People listen to Mike Sainristil. Like, those were legitimate leaders in this football program. Who are those guys now, and what decisions are they going to make in the coming weeks? But yeah, I would put it right around a 5. And I think, Trent, we've talked about it before. Like, I remember having the same question. You get to week 3 and then you're like, okay, well, still time. And then it's week 4 and it's a week 5. And at what point in time do you just say, okay, this is who they are? And I think that certainly you go into the bye week after week 6. If you come out in week 7 and you look against Illinois the same way that you've looked in the first 6 weeks of the season, where the passing game isn't great, very inconsistent on the defensive side of the ball, you're giving up a lot of points in the second half, particularly the fourth quarter. If we see that type of performance from this team, I go from a 5 to a 0. Because that, to me, just shows that they don't know how to make meaningful adjustments, and we're not going to see anything different from this team moving forward. Would you say that's fair? Like, it's so weird to me that, like, we were like, okay, Texas, USC. Well, now Washington on the road, that's the test. To me, this is the final test. It's at Illinois on the road out of the bye week. You are on the road. You're not playing at home. You're coming out of a bye week. Let's see what this team looks like. If it looks different, I've got confidence for the remainder of the season. If it looks the same, I am terrified by what's to come.
Yeah, I mean, if they go out there and they look bad against Illinois, a team that, granted, Illinois is a much
No
improved
scrub.
team.
Right, yeah, they're not
much
scrub.
improved.
Yeah.
But if you're Michigan, you got to beat those teams. And if you struggle with them or you lose to them, yeah, I mean, the season's it's done. I mean, you got Oregon, you have Ohio State, you got to go to Indiana. Michigan State's might not be no walkover either. And yeah, I mean, I think the only game left on the schedule that you could chalk up at a W is Northwestern at this point.
Yeah, Northwestern at home, by the way. If that was on the road on the lake there in late November, I might feel a little bit differently about it. Rico from the Facebook page, he says, has Sharon Moore made a single good hire? Trent, I'm going to throw that to you. Like, obviously, you know, when he had to build the staff, not an ideal situation. And I've talked about this before. It wasn't like Jim Harbaugh left and took a group with him at the same time. It was a very piecemeal approach. You had one guy. First, it was Jesse Minter. Then you had, I'm drawing a blank here. Ben Herbert. Then you had Ben Herbert go. Then it was Clinkscale that left. I mean, you were losing coaches piecemeal week by week. Is there a guy that Sharon Moore has brought in so far that you're like, okay, that was a good hire that you can point to?
I mean, I think the jury's still out there. I think most of the Michigan fan base, I know you and I were all high on what Sharon Moore did in the short amount of time that he had. I think that's the other thing that people forget about. When he took this job, it's not like there were all these coaches just waiting to jump to Michigan. He had to go out and poach guys. I still think Brian Jean-Marie was an excellent hire at linebacker. He's a great recruiter. I still think that's going to be a good hire. I know the secondary is playing poorly. I still think Lamar Morgan was overall a good hire. I think he will do a good job. Offensively, I was skeptical of Kurt Campbell being offensive coordinator. I'm not sure what that's going to look like moving forward. Obviously, defensive coordinator Wink, I thought was just an absolutely great hire. Terrific hire. Somebody that's going to run the same scheme that Michigan has been running. Definitely, the jury's definitely out there. It might be a one and done. I don't know. But no, I mean, I think there's some position coaches that Sharon brought in that I think have done or will do a good job. Lou Esposito, defensive line coach, they're playing really good. I think he was a good hire.
Yeah, and I think I've seen it in the comments here as I'm scrolling through, and I would agree, Rico. I think it's too early to tell, just in the same way that it's too early to tell whether or not Sharon Moore is going to be a long-term solution here. I think through the first 6 weeks, it hasn't looked all that great, and I think this is where you really figure out what you have in terms of a staff. You go into the bye week, you have some extra time, you can get some things implemented. You're getting a guy like Jack Tuttle back in, and we're all pretty much in agreement that he was supposed to be the guy from the very beginning. So that maybe is a reason why the offense has looked the way it's looked, but he's still just one guy. You know what I mean? You need a lot of other pieces on this offense to improve and do the things they need to do as well. And so I think the jury is still out for now. But again, if we see similar things in week 7 that we've seen through the first 6 weeks, then I think we can really sit back and say, okay, were these guys really good hires? And in particular on the defensive side of the ball, you got to see better production or at least a better scheme to put these guys in a position to succeed. And then offensively from Kurt Campbell, I'm sorry, but with Jack Tuttle being the quarterback, I know that Michigan can run the ball. You need to throw the ball down the field. Like, you're now in week 7. You've got to find a way to get these wide receivers more production. You got to find a way to get them involved. And even if it isn't successful, you at least have to show a willingness to try and do it. I think Jack Tuttle is going to give him the best chance to do that.
Oh, yeah, no question.
Let's see here. Sean, again from the Facebook page, he says, what would you guys say if Tuttle is as good as Cade was in 2021, I think you mean there? We could possibly pull an upset in Columbus. If not much to look forward to. Yeah, I certainly think if Jack Tuttle can be a Cade McNamara, if Jack Tuttle can be a Jake Rudock type, like somebody who is just a stable hand. He doesn't have to be elite. He doesn't have to be a big time playmaker, just somebody who can operate the offense efficiently. If Michigan can do that with Jack Tuttle, I think the running game is good enough to sustain drives. And I think the defense, if they put together a 4-quarter game and you get the most, like we see, I know they gave up some points, But in the first half against USC, this Michigan defense was fast and they were physical and they were a problem. If you can get a full 4 quarters of that in Columbus, coupled with an offense that's balanced and can move the ball efficiently, there is no question in my mind that Michigan can go down to Columbus and get a win against Ohio State. And the good news is that game doesn't come until November 30th. You've now got Jack Tuttle back. You've got some weeks to get this figured out. So I'll say, to answer your question, Sean, 100%. If Jack Tuttle can be as good as Cade, and I would argue that there's more capability with Jack Tuttle there, but if he can help this offense be balanced, they can put together sustained drives. And then you look at the personnel on the defense, they can put together 4 quarters of fast and physical and aggressive defense. Yeah, I think Michigan can get it done in Columbus.
Chris, you and I talked before the season that Alex Orji, Davis Warren, whoever was going to start for Michigan, if they could just be Cade McNamara,
that's it.
Michigan would probably go to the playoff again this year. And so absolutely, I think if Jack Tuttle can be Cade McNamara, even better than Cade McNamara, I think Michigan will be fine. I'm still not going to predict them to beat Ohio State and probably not Oregon, but I think that you're going to see them beat Illinois. You'd see them beat Indiana. You would see them beat Michigan State, and they would finish the season on a stronger note than how they have the first 6 weeks. I think it would make this offense so much better. Your defenses would have to respect Michigan, and it would just make for an easier watch for fans.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to, unless something dramatic changes this year, I am not going to be picking Michigan to beat Ohio State for the first time. I've done it over the last 3 years, but certainly not going to do it this year. But that doesn't mean it can't happen. And like I said in the article I put out,
Vanderbilt just beat Alabama. Like anything's possible.
Right. Anything is possible. And what's weird about that is 2 weeks ago, people were like, Michigan should have hired Kalen DeBoer instead of Sharon Moore. And then a week ago, it was like, well, screw Kalen DeBoer. He sucks. Alabama sucks. Sharon Moore should have got out and gotten, who was it? Diego Pavea or whatever the hell is the quarterback at Vandy. Like this whole second guessing and using like new data to be able to determine what decisions Sharon Moore should have made months ago at the time that he was making them. Like, you can't do that. You can't go week by week and say, oh, well, that looked good. Yeah, Sharon Moore should have done that. Like, I think he did the best he could with what he had. And given the circumstances at the time, if Jack Tuttle was able to be healthy and you can bring a 7th-year guy in as your quarterback for a year while true freshman Jaden Davis gets a year under his belt, like, to me, that was the most ideal situation. There weren't a lot of quarterbacks in the portal that were eager to come to Michigan for just a single season of play. If you truly think Jaden Davis is the future of this program, then you needed one good year out of a solid quarterback, preferably a veteran. And Sharon Moore had that on his roster with Jack Tuttle. Unfortunately, the injury complicated things, and now we all want to go back and be like, shoulda, coulda, woulda. At the time, it made sense.
Chris, just a little side note here. Going back to Kalen DeBoer, I've seen Michigan fans saying the same thing, that that's who they should have went after. Don't give Sharon Moore the job. But did you see Malachi Moore, Alabama's defensive captain, leader of the team? Did you see his temper tantrum after the game or during the game at the end?
I sure did.
Now, could you imagine if that was Will Johnson doing that? What kind of backlash Sharon Moore would be getting as a first-year head coach at Michigan? But
you can already see it from I'm not even going to call it an altercation. I mean, a lot of people are looking at Sharon Moore and what happened with Chris Bryant out at Washington and saying, like, that's just evidence that Sharon Moore doesn't have control, that, there's no leadership on this team. And, I don't know. How fair of a criticism is that? I mean, Chris Bryant he's a grown-ass man. He can make his own decisions about how he chooses to handle adversity, and obviously Michigan put out a statement about it. But I think you're right. Like, if you see a Michigan player out on the field acting that way, certainly they're going to look at whoever the head coach is and say, see, there's further. That would have never happened with Jim Harbaugh running the show.
And to my knowledge, DeBoer I know that he made a statement about his Malachi Moore's little tantrum that he made, but there was no suspension or anything like that. And I would have to guess that if this was reversed, so this happened to Will Johnson on Sharon Moore's team, if he doesn't suspend Will Johnson, like, you're just talking about so much backlash coming on this program. And it's just, to me, it's just crazy, the optics of it.
Yeah, and there's no question. And for anybody who just tuned in at that moment in time during the podcast to hear you talking about a need to suspend Will Johnson because the optics are bad, they're probably like, what the hell are these guys talking about? Will Johnson needs to be suspended? No, we're referring to a defensive back out there in Tuscaloosa. No, I didn't watch it, but I did write an article about it because I thought that there was one particularly interesting part in there where he said, he tried to help Ohio State during the 2021 season, knowing that Michigan State absolutely needed to lose for the Wolverines to be able to get into the Big Ten championship and ultimately the college football playoff. But I think CJ Frazier earlier in the podcast pretty much nailed it on the head that, Connor Stalions, I just don't find a lot of what he says to be interesting. I don't know. I'm just so exhausted. We've been doing this for a year. This started in October of last year. And for an entire year, it has been Stalions. And I'm just over it. Like the guy, I'm not going to do it.
Is that how the show ends? You just start playing the Christmas music and we hop off?
For Christmas, I never want to hear about Connor Stalions again. If I could just open that up in a box and have that happen, I would, that would be the greatest Christmas present ever. Let me see. Grew those comparisons, talking about Wink Martindale and the whole Don Brown thing again. Can we talk about that? I do want to ask this because I do think let me go back up here. I don't want to miss it. I think it's a relatively funny question. Hypothetical, of course. Trent, if Michigan comes out the second half of the season, they lose every game. Is there any chance that Sharon Moore is not here next year? If Michigan loses every game for the remainder of the season, do we see a coaching change?
4-8. I think it's possible. I don't think it would happen. I think Sharon Moore will have to get himself in trouble to be fired after one season. Now, if he goes 4-8, you're looking at, I think the year 2, you probably have to win 9 games to save your job. I think that if you win less than that, you're probably a 2-year stint and you're gone.
It's just such a funny question to me for that reason, because Rico, they can go out and lose the rest of the games this season. He's not going anywhere this year. I mean, it just, you're not going to fire Sharon Moore after year 1, especially given how chaotic and odd and weird the whole situation
was. I will say one thing though, he would lose the whole fan base. Like the whole fan base would.
Dude, if he goes out and loses to Illinois, he's going to lose the whole fan base. Like there is already half of this fan base that is ready to move on at 4-2. You drop to 4-3, you go to 4-4. I mean, look, I don't really think any of us think Michigan is going to win out, right? And you're already seeing this type of feedback at 4-2. It's, this is going to be a bumpy road for the remainder of the season for Sharon Moore unless they pull out a miracle, which I don't think they're going to do. But is it possible to win the games you're supposed to win, those 4 games against Indiana, Northwestern, Michigan State, and Illinois? Sure, it's possible to do that. Is it possible to split Oregon and Ohio State? Absolutely. And obviously, you'd rather get the one against Ohio State. So there's still very much things that can happen for the remainder of the year here to salvage it, which is why I put that article out. But it all starts with the willingness to make changes and make meaningful changes, not just do pre-snap motion where you've got guys running around and it looks fancy and then you snap the ball and it's the same old shit. Like you have got to get more creative in the types of plays that you are actually running to put guys in a position to succeed. And that needs to happen on both sides of the ball.
Yep.
Larry says he wants to win out. We all want to win out. Anthony from the Facebook page, he says, do you guys see Michigan trying to self-impose a bowl ban due to the season?
Oh, man.
What are we doing? Just try to get ahead of the whole thing. Look, NCAA, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to go ahead and self-impose the bowl ban. We can see where things are headed. The writing is on the wall. The answer to that question is absolutely not. No, maybe that was a joke. I'm not sure. Trent, any chance that we see?
No, I don't see that happening.
Boy, I tell you, if there is one way to get Sharon Moore out after year 1, it's for him to go to the podium and say, "Hey, I think here's what we should do." We'll just
my gosh, could you imagine that they win 7 games this year and we're self-imposing a bowl ban, so we're not going.
Just incredible stuff. Brian from the Facebook page, he says, if Tuttle were to get hurt, this is an interesting question. I think if Tuttle gets hurt, God forbid, I agree. Davis Warren is the clear-cut number 2. Trent, I do think this is interesting now because you have made a third quarterback switch to Jack Tuttle, but we know that things happen, injuries happen. If for some odd reason Tuttle is unable to go, who is your QB2 now at this point?
Chris, I'm going to spice it up a little bit here, okay? I'm going to spice it up a little bit.
Who Holtz is right now?
So Sherrone Moore has been asked twice now if Jaden Davis is a possibility. He has never declined saying it. I think if depending on what it is, I do believe Michigan wants to redshirt him, but he can play in 4 games to keep his red shirt. Depending on when Jack Tuttle gets hurt, I think you could see a Jaden Davis sighting. If Tuttle gets hurt this weekend, I think you see Alex Orji. The only reason why is because Sherrone Moore was asked a couple weeks ago about if Davis Warren was even a possibility to come back in for Alex Orji if he was struggling. Sherrone Moore flat out said no. Like he's not coming back in. I think that the writing is on the wall there with Davis Warren. I think that he would go with Alex Orji.
Boy, that is an interesting take and certainly not where I thought you were going to go. I mean, Brian, honestly, when I read the question, my gut instinct was, yeah, you got to go back to Davis Warren because at least he gives you the opportunity to continue to throw the ball down the field. And I go back to what I said earlier that, when Davis Warren started out at quarterback to begin the year, the Michigan offense was, and it's not like they're great at pass pro right now, right? Like they're making strides, they are improving, they're getting better, but it was very much a work in progress week 1, week 2, week 3. And I think Davis Warren was trying to deal with that. And I think it just forced him into situations where he was making mistakes and trying to do way more than you would want a guy like Davis Warren to do. So would he be better in the Michigan offense week 7 versus what he was, week 1, 2, and 3? I tend to believe that if the offensive line performs a little bit better. And so if I had to say, I think, yeah, you go back to Davis Warren. He's your QB2 until I see Jaden Davis actually on the field on a fall Saturday. It's one of those, it's where I was with Jack Tuttle weeks ago, where I was like, I'm just not going to keep predicting it because I don't know that it's ever going to happen. I feel the same way about Jaden Davis. Would love to see him get an opportunity if and when that time comes. But until that happens, Brian, yeah, I think Davis Warren is QB2 if for some odd reason Tuttle goes down.
Yeah, and I don't think that Michigan's going to just waste Jaden Davis's red shirt. I think we're talking about if there's 2 games left in the year, 3 games left in the year, Jack Tuttle goes down. More than likely, Michigan season's over by that point in time anyway. And I think you could see, just throw him in there, see what he does.
Throw him in, see what he can do. Weeks ago, I was like, that is a stupid idea. Why would anybody want to throw a true freshman? Now I'm at the point where I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Can he throw the ball down the field? Put him out there. That's where I'm at now. Ricky from the Facebook page, he says, did anyone notice the death glare Coach Moore gave Edwards after he said Vegas had something to do with the turf? Yeah, we talked about that on Monday. That was that was one of those moments. And I always do this when I talk about Donovan Edwards. I am a fan of Donovan Edwards. I like him personally, but I do think the Vegas comment was just a bad joke, bad timing. And I think a lot of people were confused by what he meant there, but certainly after he said he thought Vegas had something to do with the turf, Sherrone Moore almost broke his neck. He turned so quickly looking to Donovan Edwards. And I said this on Monday. It looked like he wanted to pick Donovan up and just be like, all right, that's enough press conference for you. We'll take you back to the locker room. So, I mean, how much of that do you think, are people reading too much into a comment like that? Or do you think that is somewhat of an indication of just like things are different this year? Like, does Blake Corum make a statement like that?
Absolutely not. Blake Corum does not say that. JJ McCarthy doesn't say that. Zach Zinder doesn't say that. Mike Sainer still won't say that. Yeah. That goes back to my point, though, I made, I think, on Monday, that I think Michigan's missing that leadership on the team this year. And I do believe Donovan Edwards is probably that, at least the loudest vocal leader on the team. And you would never, ever see one of those guys in 23, 22. They wouldn't make remarks like that.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this a lot with that team and covering the team and being as close, to that whole situation as I was, that, here I am, 40-year-old guy, and you're around a bunch of college kids, and it's almost like you're talking to them as if they're equals, that they're just like the level of maturity that 2023 team had was really off the charts. And I think that that's rare in especially with today's youth in college football. I just think that, not to say that there isn't maturity on this team, because I certainly think that there is, but I think that's just one of the other reasons why 2023 was so special and so successful, because you had a collection of guys that were wise beyond their years. They approached the game, not just in their preparation, but how they interacted with the media in just a very mature, measured way. And I think you're right. Like, you don't see Mike Samerstill make that comment. You don't see Blake Corum make that comment. You don't see JJ make that. I mean, you can go down the list. There's a ton of guys. You might see Trevor Keegan make that comment. He was a bit of a jokes, but yeah, overall, I just think, again, the level of maturity on the 2023 team, it really does seem to be, it's just, it's a little bit lacking this year. And it's not really a knock on those guys. It's just an observation, what I saw last year versus what I see this year.
Yep.
I want to continue to go through here as we are now at 1 hour and 9 minutes. My goodness, that flew by real quick. Rico from the Facebook page, he says Jaden Davis here next year. I mean, that would be pure speculation. I've got no reason to believe he would leave at this point. I don't know, Trent, anything you want to do with that?
I mean, that's pure speculation, and I don't really want to speculate on guys transferring, but I believe that he probably thinks that he has a good shot to start next season for Michigan. And I've got to also believe that Sharon Moore was a big part of as to why Jaden Davis is here in the first place. And I really do think Michigan's putting their chips in his basket to be the guy next year.
Sean from the Facebook page, if Harbaugh stayed on with all of his staff and they had the exact same roster, do they do a better job? Yes. I don't have any question about that. Yeah, there's no question. Jesse Minter, clearly an incredible coach. Jim Harbaugh, I just think, there's certain guys, when they walk into a room, they have a certain presence about him. And I think that he had that impact on the guys around him. And this is not a knock on Sharon Moore, but Sharon Moore, the reality of it is he is a first-year head coach with a brand new staff, and he is trying to figure out his own path through college football. But yeah, certainly if Jim Harbaugh stays and you have Ben Herbert still in the strength and conditioning room, I think this thing looks a lot different. I think you see far more discipline, and I think you see far more continuity than what we thought we were going to get. I mean, that was one of the biggest advantages to keeping Sharon Moore on, right, was to keep the continuity with the team, to just keep that train moving as it was. And, I applaud the effort, and I was on board with it, and I'm still on board with it. It's not like I've reversed course on that, but clearly there was not a smooth transition that took place from the end of the Harbaugh era into the Sharon Moore era.
Yeah, it just shows you how important coaching is and keeping the chemistry of the team, the culture. You're talking about brand new coaches here in Michigan, and I think it's showing.
Travis, I mean, you're more than welcome to make the case. Why should I listen to it? What haven't we heard everything we need to know? Like, what is there something groundbreaking in this podcast appearance? Like, I know about the sleeping in the car thing. Like, I watched the documentary, the Netflix documentary. I don't know. Is there any earth shattering thing that came out of this? Trent, did you watch it? Did you listen to this thing?
No, but I think I might, after seeing all the comments today in the thread about how good it was, I might actually listen to it.
Give me one good reason. As a guy who has Connor Stalions fatigue, who never wants to hear about this guy again, like, give me a reason why it would be worth tuning in. If you think it is, I'll certainly, I might give it a second look. Bobby, let's see. Do you think Tuttle gets all the reps? Bobby from the Facebook page, he says, do you think Tuttle gets all the reps for the next 2 weeks and shows pretty good movement against the Illini? Yeah, I mean, unless it's some sort of injury or the previous injury that comes lingering back. Yeah, I think Tuttle's the guy for the remainder of the season. I don't think there's any question about it.
Yeah, I mean, Sharon's basically already said that he's the guy moving forward, and Tuttle's going to get implemented into the system as the number one guy.
This right here is what drives me insane. This is what absolutely drives me insane. M. Goboski from the YouTube page, he says, the Stalions hate makes no sense. He was doing what everyone else does. I want him back at Michigan when possible. I mean, Trent, thoughts? Would you take him back with open arms? Was he doing the same thing that everybody else was doing? Just you're an honest guy. You're a straight shooter. Agree here?
I mean, I think that he probably... He went to further heights than what a lot of these guys do. But yes, I think that every team has a guy like a Connor Stalions on it. I don't think he will ever be welcomed back at Michigan. I don't think that the university will ever allow him to coach again at Michigan. I understand that there are fans that look up to Connor Stalions for some reason and think that he was a big part of into what Michigan did. Do I think he was good at what he did? Absolutely. Do I think that he was a smart guy? Absolutely. I think he knew the ins and outs of it. Did he take too many steps past that line? I think so. And I think that's what ultimately cost him and why he won't ever be welcome back at Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, why? I don't understand. It makes no sense to me how it makes no sense. Like Connor Stalions was at the center of the NCAA investigation that got Jim Harbaugh suspended and ultimately helped push him out of Ann Arbor altogether. So why would I look at this guy in a positive light at all? And I agree with Trent that I'm not saying he wasn't a smart guy, and I'm not saying he wasn't good at stealing signs, and I'm not saying there's not other programs that steal signs. All of that is true. But you have to understand that it sure as hell seems like he took it a step further, but multiple steps too far in terms of either going to other games himself, sending other people to games, dressing up in a disguise and going and standing on the sideline of the Central Michigan State game. Like those types of things to me were a guy who very much his personal ambitions were bigger than what was best for the team. I think as a pure sign stealer, Connor Stalions could have been very, very good in his role and had a long profession in the college football ranks. But I think you continue to try to outsmart the system. And he talked about it in the Netflix documentary that, he wanted to live in the gray area. And I think his whole thing was pushing the limits of what he thought was possible. And he crossed the line, and it ultimately got Jim Harbaugh suspended. It ultimately ended that era at the University of Michigan. And it ultimately put Michigan's championship in question. There's people that look at it and question whether or not it was legitimate. For as much as I loved the run in 2023 and how incredible it was, that negative aspect of it is always going to be a part of it. And so, no, I don't think Stalions was so special that Michigan needed him to do what they did in 2023. His influence on that season is a negative one, and that's how I'm always going to look at it and always going to view it. And so to say the hate makes no sense to me, I find it even weirder that people are applauding this guy as if he's some sort of hero when I think everybody could sit back and agree that Michigan didn't need him. I mean, that's really where I stand. And
yeah, I see comments on there that everyone does advanced scouting, and I don't completely disagree with that. But
yes, they do.
But at the end of the day, Connor Stalions got caught, and whether it was the way that he got caught was legal or not, it's a different story. But he got caught. And now Michigan's in the crosshairs because of it.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's also a part of it. You know what I mean? If you are elite and you are like, why were you the guy that got caught? And then you can go to the whole conspiracy thing. Well, Ryan Day and his brother and all this other, I don't know. It's weird enough out there. Jeez, we got people on Twitter suggesting that there are weather-making weapons that are causing hurricanes out in the ocean to sway elections. Like, I just can't go down any more rabbit holes. I damn near deleted the Twitter app today because I logged on and I sent you a tweet the other day, Trent, that just blew my mind. And then I thought it was just one lunatic saying it, and it turns out there is a whole segment of the population that thinks there are weather-making weapons out there, and they're creating hurricanes for sinister purposes. We have reached peak level of stupidity in humanity, and there is unfortunately no way of going back. Trying to catch up because now we're at that point. Hour 16 minutes. I have lost I've missing a lot of comments here. Trying to go through. We're still at the 4 and 8. He gets fired. Not this year. Did I miss it? HARP is a real thing. Please stop. I saw somebody on Twitter take a picture of the sky of where jets had flown over, and they were like, this isn't normal. Like, why is this happening now? A month before the election, we have these in the sky. I'm like, yes, I see them every goddamn day. Jets fly overhead. They leave those trails behind. You're not being poisoned. We're going to go off the rails real quick here. I don't know that I missed anything. I was looking for somebody to give me a good reason to why I should watch the podcast, and I haven't quite seen it yet. You guys cover the team. You should.
This has anything to do with us covering the team?
Right. It's a Connor Stalions thing. This has nothing to do with the Michigan football team. We do cover the team. We're there on Saturdays. We watch it during the week. trying to figure out how we can create.
But covering press conferences, like anything that deals with the University of Michigan, I don't think he's not part of it anymore. Like he's not part of Michigan. So
right.
We don't have to cover every single time he's on a podcast.
And you know what happens when we do cover it? I get half the people that push back and say that they never want to hear about him again. So that it's a lose-lose thing. But I don't think being informed on all things Connor Stalions has any sort of, whether or not
is it interesting? I find it interesting, which is why I'm probably going to listen to it. But like if you're someone like Chris, where you don't want anything to do with Connor Stalions, there's no reason that you even need to watch it because it doesn't have anything to do with Michigan.
I'll give him props. I'll give him credit. It's Sean Patrick from the Facebook page. He says, Connor true or false?
Oh, true. 100% true.
Is truly the biggest Michigan football fan in the world right now. For whatever my personal thoughts on him are and what he did, I would 100% hammer true on this. I think this guy, to his credit, was willing to do anything and everything to try to help Michigan win. And maybe that is like the one silver lining here. But also, like, when you're on staff, like, dude, we see it in the media. When you're part of the media, you have to check your fandom. You can't be super fan and media guy. And as a matter of fact, like, I was very much told when I tried to attend a specific event that was only for fans, I was very much told from people in the athletic department that I had to make a choice. Either I was somebody who covered the team or I was a fan. And so I had to leave the event. I had to leave the fan event because I couldn't be there as a member of the media. And I think the same certainly applies to somebody who joins the staff as a fan. Like, you can, as a fan, want to everything in the world to help Michigan win and get to where they need to be. But when you are a member of the staff, you have to have the wherewithal to know what the limits are and not be wearing disguises on the sideline of a football game and thinking that that's okay. That doesn't happen everywhere for as much as you'd like to claim it does. Not you in particular, Sean. I'm just saying here. What are you smirking about over there? I can
just
see it.
Read these comments at the bottom.
Oh my God. I might as well just let me just go to the bottom here.
Larry says maybe Stalions is the MMB account.
Could be. MMB says, what is it? I didn't read this. Hey, Chris, since you hate Connor so much, go over to Hailgate and talk to him for a couple of minutes. I bet your mind. And look, I have reached out to Connor. If he wants to have a conversation, I'm more than willing to have a conversation with him. And if he, this is so stupid because I'm a nobody. But I mean, if he wanted to talk to me about it and, he had some valid points he wanted to make, I'm willing to listen. But I just I am exhausted from it. And I don't think that there's anything that you could really say, even if it's like, well, these guys do this and these guys do that. Like, I have a good idea of what Connor Stalions was doing. And I don't think it was necessary to Michigan's success. And I am so tired of his story and his methods being a part of Michigan's story. I'm annoyed by it. I'm over it. I just don't want to deal with it. I don't want to hear about it. And I'm certainly not going to go visit him at some tailgate. My Lord. Bo was a fan. Yeah, Bo was a fan. He certainly was a fan. Am I missing anything else here? Otherwise, he was just wearing. Connor Stalions only wore the wig on the sideline for that Central Michigan game because he just wanted to feel. Yeah, listen, as a bald man, I can understand.
Yeah, I think you would know. You could relate.
As a bald man, I can say that I just think sometimes, like when Halloween comes around and I get to wear a wig, like it's fun. It's fun to do this, Trent. You know what this is. This sort of thing. This. Like when I do that, it's just my head twitching. But when people with hair do that, like there's a purpose for it. I don't have that. You know what? The opportunity is there. The invitation is there. I think we're too small time for a guy like that. I think.
Could you imagine if he came on this show?
He ain't gonna come on the show. It's not.
Is that because you're not gonna let him?
He's not gonna. I mean, is he? I don't know. Is MBB Stalions? Maybe it's possible. I don't know. First, I thought it was Trent's wife. Now it could be Connor Stalions. I don't know who the hell that person is. M. Goboski says if Stalions wasn't on the CMU sideline, would you feel different? Honestly, yeah, I think I might.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
I think I might feel a little bit different if Connor Stalions was not on the sideline wearing a disguise. And I think here's the other thing I'll say. I think I would feel differently, and this is just my preference. I feel like I would feel differently if he chose to handle everything that happened after it came out differently. I didn't really care for the Barstool appearances and the disguise and playing up this sort of sinister role thing and kind of leaning into what he was being accused of. I thought it was great for Barstool and I thought it was great for content, but I didn't think it was great for the Michigan football program. I thought that was a mistake. And I think that in a lot of ways, the way that he handled everything after this became a thing, the way that he handled it contributed to it becoming bigger than it needed to be. For instance, if he had just come out after he, they say he resigned from his role, whatever it was, he was not going to stay on staff after this all came out. But if he had come out and just been honest, like held a press conference and said, here's what happened, here's what I was doing. It happens in college football. I didn't realize I was doing anything wrong and certainly didn't have anybody else involved. Like, I just think there was a way that he could have handled it to where it wouldn't have become this big thing. But instead he kept quiet. He didn't say anything. And then he leaned into this sort of mystery man thing and the stuff he was doing with Barstool. And then you come out with the Netflix special like 2 days before Michigan kicks off the 2024 season. To me, it was more about him than it was about the team and doing what was best for the program. And I think that's another area where I take issue. So yeah, couple that with the sideline Central Michigan disguise type shit. And I just feel like it was way over the top and way unnecessary.
Chris, would you quit being a Michigan fan if Connor Stalions became the next head coach?
I don't even know why you're asking that question. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. Connor Stalions says he helped Ohio State in 21. Yes, I saw that. Netflix propaganda. Stalions to be our just to annoy. He watches the show. You could just, he's not watching the show. I don't think so. You think Stalions is watching? I honestly,
he could be one of the biggest fans of the show.
I am surprised by some of the people that tune in. There are some people that come up and approach me and they're like, I watched the show. And I'm like, you what? You watch the show? Why? Why do you watch this show? We don't know shit. Yeah, I know. Would you want Connor back if you knew we would be 6-0? No. Look, we're going to leave it there. 125 minutes. Is this a record for us?
It's got to be. It has to be.
The longest show. Ricky says this has been a great show. Love these hour-and-a-half shows. Really appreciate all you guys do. Look, Ricky, we appreciate you guys as well.
I'm going to shoot for 2 hours next time.
We'll try to go 2 hours next time. Look, here I was going into the show, and I know weeks ago I said we'd never talk about Stalions again, and then here we are once again. I think we probably spent
a good chunk of it. Yeah, a good chunk of it.
Good chunk of the show talking about Stalions. But look, I mean, I think that here's a bit of housekeeping here. We are not going to be doing a show on Friday because obviously there is no game this weekend. So Trent and I are going to take Friday off. We will be back on Monday at noon, game week, talking about Illinois and some of those things. Then obviously Wednesday is going to be another fan-led Wednesday. Friday we'll do our game predictions. And then once again, we are not traveling to Champaign. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody want to go down to Champaign, Illinois. It is, you think about going to Illinois, we can visit Chicago. No, Champaign is like 5 hours away from Chicago. I'm not trying to go to that game. So once again, I will be at home on the couch in pocket, maybe a mimosa in the hand, live posting during the game, going through all the emotions with you guys. And then Trent, do we do a live post-game show after Illinois?
Absolutely. It was good last time.
It was a success last time. Hopefully when we do that, we are talking about a Michigan win, but we will be off on Friday, back on Monday. Keep the faith, keep the hope. Yeah, Connor, if you're out there, what the hell? Come on the show. We'll talk.
Come on over.
On the show, we will talk about it. We'll get it figured out. Maybe we can find some common ground. But you know what? Listen, I can't end on Mr. Brightside. I just need something. I need something a little more joyous to lead us out here.
Don't want a lot for Christmas. There is just one thing I need. Don't care.